So, I thought I would share this with you tonight because I just thought it was such a good article written by David Brooks of the New York Times, and it's entitled "Read Buber, Not the Polls." And you know, we're all going through this whole thing now with the election just a few days away. And this is what he has to say. If America were a marriage, we'd need therapy. There has been so much bad communication over the past year. People talking in warring monologues past each other, ignoring the facts and using lazy stereotypes like elites and Trumpians to reduce complex individuals into simplistic categories. Meanwhile, our main candidates are poor connectors. We've got the self-enclosed narcissism of Donald Trump, and to a lesser degree, the mistrustful defensiveness of Hillary Clinton's campaign. As an antidote for all this, I've been reading the work of Martin Buber, the early 20th century Jewish theologian who dedicated his career to understanding deep intimacy. Buber is famous for the distinction between I-it relationships and I-thou relationships. I-it relationships come in two varieties. Some are strictly utilitarian. You're exchanging information in order to do some practical thing, like getting your taxes done. But other I-it relationships are truncated versions of what should be deep relationships. You're with a friend, a colleague, a spouse, or a neighbor, but you're not really bringing your whole self to that encounter. You're fearful, closed, or withdrawn, objectifying her, talking at her, offering only a shallow piece of yourself and seeing only the shallow piece of her. I-thou relationships, on the other hand, are personal, direct, dialogical. Nothing is held back. A thou relationship exists when two or more people are totally immersed in their situation. When deep calls to deep, when they are offering up themselves and embracing the other in some total unself-conscious way, when they are involved in mutual, animated describing. So now we've spoken here about that kind of a relationship, right? When the me is on a shelf, and when you're fully present with the other person, open and connecting. He goes on. A doctor has an I-it relationship with a patient when he treats him as a machine in need of repair. But Peter DeMarco described an I-thou relationship in a letter to the doctors and nurses who cared for his dying wife, which was published in the Times. Quote, "How many times did you hug me and console me when I fell to pieces, or ask about Laura's life and the person she was, taking the time to look at her photos or read the things I'd written about her? How many times did you deliver bad news with compassionate words and sadness in your eyes? In our culture, we use phrases like finding oneself, finding your passion, loving yourself so you can love others. But Buber argued that it's nonsensical to think of the self in isolation. The I only exists in relation to some other. This is a quote. The development of the soul in the child is inextricably bound with that of the longing for the thou, he wrote. All through life, the self is emerging out of some dialogue, either a cold, stifling one or a rich, complete one. All real living is meeting. All real living is meeting. In other words, life is a relationship. Life is never in isolation. We're all in relationship. You're in relationship with the mailman. You're in relationship with your neighbor. You're in relationship with your friend. We are all always in relationship. Life is relationship. You're in relationship with ideas. You're in relationship with your work. Life is relationship. But what is the quality of that relationship? And are we really relating? Or do we only see each other as objects? Do we see ourselves as objects and each other as objects? Because then the relationship is quite different. And that's what he meant when he spoke about an I-it relationship. He goes on, Brooks goes on. You can't intentionally command an I-thou moments into being. You can only be open to them and provide fertile soil. Some people go through life with a detached posture, trying to self-differentiate themselves and be more sophisticated than others. Those people tend to have mechanical relationships. Their feelings are self-enclosed. They don't get to experience the thou. I just want to add here that the I-thou relationship is not the relationship of a me with a you. The I-thou relationship is truly a relationship of the ultimate in you and the ultimate in the other. Actually, in reality, there is no other. But for these purposes, the ultimate in you is the I he's talking about. And the thou is the same divine presence in the other. And that's true relating. Because there's no me there. There's no ego there. There's no agenda there other than to connect and relate. So, others adopt a guard-down posture that is open-hearted and open-minded. They regard others as unique persons and not objects. They have histories in which trust and vulnerability are rewarded. Trust and vulnerability. You know, to be in a relationship, a true intimate relationship, you can't have defenses up. That's why it's so scary to so many people to be in a true intimate relationship. You have to be with your guard down. And that means you're vulnerable. And that means you can get hurt. And that means you can get rejected. But who's getting hurt? And who's getting rejected? The image. The image I have about myself is going to get hurt or rejected. But when the me is not there, and you're truly fully present, then who's going to be hurt? What's going to get hurt? He goes on. Such people experience moments of genuine dialogue. Buber described genuine dialogue as sort of a social flow. Teachers and students are learning with each other. An audience and an artist are lost in a performance. You see, it's a dialogue without a me. So I'm not trying to convince you of anything. I'm just an open presence. And you're an open presence. And so we flow together with an open mind, in true being in the moment. And that's how we learn. And that's how we listen. I mean, isn't that true? These moments don't last. It is, quote, the exalted melancholy of our fate that thou moments always fade back into it moments. But a world has been built during such intense moments. A binding cord has been strengthened. The person who has experienced the thou has been thickened and come closer to wholeness. Yes. Is that not true? When you're in a thou relationship, and it is so open that you do feel understood, and you do come closer to wholeness, because there's an openness of receiving and an openness of giving. Buber's writings remind us to be intentional and brave about relationships, but it also has communal and political implications. Some organizations and leaders nurture open-hearted bonds. Such communities usually begin, Buber wrote, with some sacred thou moment, like the Exodus story for the Jews, or the revolutionary struggles of the early Americans. Leaders connect current problems to that, quote, living effective center, and set the table for situations of caring and trust. Buber's story is also apt because he overcame betrayal to come to a posture of trust. When he was a small boy, his mother eloped with an army officer and wasn't seen for 30 years. But he still had the courage to throw himself wholly in with his wife, Paula. Their marriage became a living example of a true and equal vow. Today, America is certainly awash in distrust. So many people tell stories of betrayal. So many leaders, in quotes Trump, model combativeness, isolation, and distrust. But the only way we get beyond depressing years like this one is at the level of intimacy. If Americans reconnect with the living center of the national story, and they rebuild thous at every level, the only way to get beyond the depressing years like this one is at the level of intimacy. If Americans reconnect with the living center of the national story, and they rebuild thous at every level. So,
Well, you know, he starts off with using the metaphor of marriage that the American needs to write. So, of course, when you get up there and you promise to love, honor, and cherish one another, when couples marry, they're promising to deliver an I-thou relationship to each other. But unfortunately, most people who make those vows don't have a real deep understanding of what's required. Because in order to deliver on that kind of a commitment, in order to hold up your end of an I-thou relationship, you cannot be selfish.
right.
That's the key. You know, the more selfish you are, the less you're going to be in an I-thou relationship. Because the heart of an I-thou relationship, it seems to me, is the capacity to empathize and put myself in your skin, feel what you're feeling, see with your eyes, hear with your ears.
Yes.
And it's so interesting because I sat with a gentleman this morning who was very unhappy in a long, long marriage. And why is he unhappy? And it comes down to his feeling that, so they have this marriage and his wife is very happy because she has lots of interests that she pursues. She has friends, and she still works part-time. He, on the other hand, doesn't have quite as many interests and is not working, and wants her to play with him, wants to do more things on the weekends, wants to travel to see family. No. He likes to stay home. He doesn't want to take flights to see the family. And so it's like he's happy in his world and she's unhappy in her world. And in a marriage, you know, that's a contradiction.
No, I thought you said the opposite.
I'm trying to mix up the genders to not make it sound.
But you're
We're paying attention.
You're getting yourself.
Good, good.
Keep the story straight.
Yeah. So, but anyway, in a marriage, right, it can't work if I'm happy and you're unhappy, right? It only works when we're both happy. We have to put together a life that makes us feel like we're both happy. And if one of us is not happy, then that demands my attention if I'm in an I-thou relationship. If I'm in an I-it relationship, you know, your unhappiness rolls off my back. Because in order to pay attention to what you're unhappy about, I'm probably going to have to disrupt my routine or give up something that I take pleasure in. And that's the very definition of an I-it situation. An I-thou situation means when you're unhappy, of course, I'm concerned. I want to know what I can do about it.
But there's only so much you can do for some people who are not taking it upon themselves to do anything about their, you know, level of happiness. And you can't be everything to someone. And
No. But there's.
I mean, I know there's a, you know, there's a certain.
But there's a concern.
Yeah.
And there's an interest. And there is an involvement, so that I at least want to understand what that is. I mean, you do that with a close friend.
Right.
You do it with your kid.
But
You
some
want
people
to
seem to be attached to being unhappy. Like they're, I don't know.
attached to being unhappy.
Yeah, because there are a lot of things you can do to make yourself happier.
Yes, you can do things to make yourself happy, but you still want to feel happy in relationship.
Right.
So
yeah.
it really doesn't help our relationship if I spend a lot of time doing the things that make me happy and you spend a lot of time doing the things that make you happy. Then we're like cohabitating, ships passing in the night. What do we really need to be together for? What is the basis of our togetherness then? Talking about the nuts and bolts of daily life, how deep is our connection? If I don't have a curiosity about what goes on inside you, whether you're feeling happy or not, whether you're feeling fulfilled or not, whether you're feeling like we're having fun together, if all that really doesn't register in my consciousness, how involved am I in the relationship?
I think there's a key, is that intimacy is the ability to feel compassion for someone.
Yes.
Right? Being willing to say, I'm not responsible for your feelings, but I understand where your feelings are coming from, and if you need my help, I can offer it. That's how I kind of view. I think that's what this is all about.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
We don't connect with people who don't believe what we believe in.
That's right.
Because we don't have the ability to. We may not agree, but we don't have the ability to have compassion because their viewpoints come from their history, right?
Yes.
And my capacity to demonstrate compassion will depend greatly on how selfish I am.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
It's true, because very often in a relationship, like one person is happier than the other, and then they don't really want to hang out with the other one because they're not fun to be around.
Right.
Like even if they do spend time together, they're like, it's such a downer. So
that's right.
it is
Well,
interesting.
Well, listen. That may be valid if like you have a long history of just reveling in being unhappy, right?
Yeah.
But that could also be a nice defense of mine. You're always unhappy. I really don't have to change anything about myself. I'm not going to stop playing golf 4 days a week and spend some time with you because you're always unhappy.
Look, I think what's really important is the I-it relationship that he's talking about here is coming more or less from a survival mentality. And it's me against the world. It's me against you. It's coming from a sense of separation. It's not at all seeing the other person or other people, as human beings, with the same fears, the same concerns, the same wants, the same needs that I have. We're the same in that. So with a survival mentality, it's my survival. And I'll do anything that I need to do to maintain that survival, to maintain that security. And it takes different forms. It takes the form of arrogance. It takes the form of narcissism. It takes the form of a heartless reaction to animals, to people. It takes so many forms, this survival mentality. And I can't get past myself to another person. But that's all wrapped up in an image and a belief that I am this body, mind, and ego. And even though I may be religious, and even though I may go to a temple or a church or whatever, I'm still living from a self-centered me. And so if you don't agree, it's either you're with me or against me, it's either my way or the highway. If you don't agree with me, then you're my enemy. On one level or another. And all that has to do with the survival mentality. But when you look at the idea or the being of a non-dual existence, when you look from that perspective, the only thing you will see is from the perspective of a caring consciousness. A caring consciousness. So that means you're aware of how the survival mentality works inside you, and all the fears, all the greed, all the pettiness, all the having to expand yourself. You've got to be so tall because you feel so small and because you're scared. And you see that. And why do you see that? Because you don't want to live that way anymore. Because you're tired of that. Because that's not the way to live. And it's not your true nature. Everybody wants to be happy. And yes, you're right, there are some people that get happiness by being unhappy, but they really want happiness. And they want to be connected. Because they want to be connected to their true being, their true nature. And they want to touch the divine in another person, because that brings out the divine and the goodness in them.
When is it when children growing up recognize their parents as human beings?
Yeah.
About when does that happen?
Well, at around age 2, when the child begins to see a me. But you see, from childhood on, the image begins, right? Because the parents have an image of each other, of themselves, and they have an image of what this child should be. And then the kid goes to school and the teachers have an image. And the other kids have an image. And that's why there's such a thing as bullying and hurting. I mean, the cruelty of it. The cruelty to animals. The cruelty. All from this survival mentality. That I can't get past my own self. Because I'm so scared and security is the most important thing. But from a caring consciousness, you can begin to see the world differently. And we're so fortunate. Most of us in this country especially are so fortunate that we have that freedom.
Well, you talk about a caring consciousness, but the only way you come to a caring consciousness is to know and be able to identify within yourself all the ways you operate from the survival mentality.
That's right.
And then make an effort to cut those back so that you then have the possibility for showing up as a more compassionate person. You know, Buber also said if you want to find God, look in the spaces between people.
That's right.
But certainly he's talking about if you look in the spaces between where there's an I and thou relationship.
Yes.
Where, you know, the best in me is meeting the best in you, so to speak.
Right. Right.
So
yeah.
in a sense, it's about adding and subtracting. I was thinking about this, you know, it's like your whole life is just a series of additions and subtractions. You know, subtracting out all the ways that I act from an ego, an image, and trying to minimize those, and add as many caring, loving, compassionate behaviors as I can. Remember we read that book, God is a verb?
Yes.
Well, love is a verb also. You know, you have to act it out. Love is caring in action. So, you know, I could say I love you till now and the cows come home, but if it's not showing up in my behavior, what good is it? So,
Yes. Yes. You know, that's why it's almost painful when you hear the politicians and what's going on now, and you hear them speak badly about the other. Don't you find that painful? I find that. It seems, it just feels so hurtful. Every time I hear speaking badly, so badly about the other person. And that's an example of I have to put you down so that I can be higher up. And it's so regressive. You know, we're regressed. We've regressed to high school actions, to childish high school being. In fact, most kids in high school aren't even that horrible.
It really shows they don't care about the people that vote for them, the way they treat us.
That's right.
If they did, they would act differently, wouldn't they?
That's right.
The self-interest comes first before people.
That's right. The self-interest becomes first. That's right. Because, that's right. Because when you care, you're right. When you care about people, you don't speak in ways that hurt people and offend people. You deliver the message you have to deliver, whatever it is that you're all about in your policies and principles, without putting another person down.
Yeah, I heard one on the radio today, and I didn't even know who the politician was running, because it was solely denigrating their opponent.
Yes.
Not one word about this is what I'm going to do.
Exactly.
All it was if I paint this person as badly as possible, then you have to vote for me.
That's
And
it.
it was appalling. I was like,
It is.
Yeah.
It's painful.
And that's what we're.
Well, you know, we've said this before, but it would seem that an objective look at things would have to yield that globally the level of consciousness of the planet is still pretty much at a survival mentality. And a survival mentality, we said, means three things. It's a consciousness that's dominated by self-interest, self-protection, and self-expansion. And so if you look globally at where the planet is, consciousness-wise, it would seem that even though there are pockets of wonderful, good things going on, generally we're still trying to work ourselves past the survival mentality. And the only thing we can each do about it is to make sure that we're not, pumping that out into the atmosphere by our thoughts, feelings, and actions.
Well, many world leaders do what's best for them politically
That's
rather than take care of their country.
That's
Of course,
I know.
of course.
Like
It's-
one person instead of millions.
Yeah,
It's
that's what it's
amazing.
all about.
Amazing.
Yes.
Keeping on to their,
That's right.
Power.
That's right.
Like Paul says, it's survival mentality
That's right. That's right.
at the top.
Right.
and the whole planet at the moment, if you want to just call it, but the whole planet seems to be in such trouble as we know it. I mean, country after country, turmoil,
Yeah.
chaos.
Yes.
I mean, even in Britain today, they had all kinds of
Yes.
upheavals.
Yes.
So
Right.
I suppose Iceland is the way to go.
So what I wanted to share with you was what the kind of loving and caring looks like in an I-thou relationship. Because I thought you would be interested in that. Now, mind you, this is a relationship with a partner, with a child, with a sibling, with a friend, relationship.
And it's all like, or with your doctor. Remember the good old days when the doctor made house calls and he would come and he would know you and all that? Now you go to the doctor and you're like, you get 10 minutes and he's confused about exactly who you are.
Yeah.
And they have to ask your date of birth to make sure that they're talking to the right person.
Not my
right?
doctor.
Good thing, you're lucky. So,
Well, here's a quote, here's a quote from Alfred Adler, one of the early a psychoanalyst. You've heard
The
of him?
Adler Institute?
Yeah, you know Alfred Adler, yeah. Well, Paul and I were very fortunate. For 15 years we studied with his son, Kurt Adler, who was a wonderful, wonderful psychiatrist and teacher. But anyway, this is the father, Alfred, and he says about a marital relationship. If each partner is to be more interested in the other partner than in himself, there must be equality. If there is to be so intimate a devotion, neither partner can feel subdued nor overshadowed. Equality is only possible if both partners have this attitude. It should be the effort of each to ease and enrich the life of the other. In this way, each is safe. Each feels that he is worthwhile. Each feels that he is needed. So what we discovered, because we did a major study, actually it was a study I had to do for my doctorate. We did a major study of what it looked like, the kind of love and caring in a close I-thou relationship. Now mind you, even though it can be seen as the ideal, the fact that it exists means that it can exist.
It's possible.
And it's good to see what's possible. But you just see what's possible, but you can't compare yourself to that. Because if you compare yourself and feel less than, you're back in the survival ego mode. So it's just good to hear about it and to take in whatever strikes you. So the first thing we discovered was that there is a quality of caring that we called sustenance caring. Now mind you, this kind of caring that we're going to talk about, or loving, is reciprocal. Sometimes I can only give 10% and you give 90%. And other times I give 90% and you can only give 10%. But in the big picture of relationship, it's equal. Sustenance caring is conveyed by frequent physical show of affection, touching, holding, hugging, kissing, all of the above apart from sexual desire and responsiveness. And all of the above in an intimate relationship with one partner, all of the above including sexual desire and responsiveness. So that's the actual physical affection. Sustenance caring is conveyed by frequent verbal show of affection, telling the other about the goodness one sees in the other, telling the other he or she is cared about, telling the other he or she is loved. It's important. Verbal affection. Again, to whomever you're in partnership with, to whomever you're in relationship with. Continual effortless awareness, sensing the other's moods and feelings, anticipating the other's needs. Trusting behaviors, non-competitiveness with the other person, not hurting or harming the other, physically or emotionally. Can we do that? Can we do that? Especially when we feel hurt or angry or disappointed. Trusting behaviors, no secrets or pretense. Honesty, but honesty with goodwill and kind intentions. Being reliable and dependable. Generosity. giving freely and willingly of one's time, attention, and resources. All this is caring for another person, nurturing. This is, you could call it nurturing loving. That's how you nurture another human being. Genuine involvement with the other. Looking so as to actually see the other. Listening so as to actually hear. Talking to the other, openly self-sharing with the other, openly sharing your fears, your sorrows, your angers, your preoccupations, as well as your joys and pleasures. An openness. When you're open that way with another person, especially someone you're intimate with, you're connecting. Unselfish concern, reflected in the tone of voice and demeanor. Being loving, being. That means being fully present without a me, without the ego in the way, without the ego filtering through as you're trying to connect with another. Being understanding, being thoughtful, being patient, being able to sacrifice without regret, nurturing the other, giving freely and willingly of yourself, and not allowing self-destructive acts on the part of another person. And what does this then do? What does it do inside of you?
When you receive it.
This is what they told us. The feeling, the subjective feeling, whether you're receiving this or giving it. Because you know, you get loved by giving. When you're giving caring, when you're giving it, it fills you with love. As much as when you're receiving it. So it feels that you feel like you're loved. It feels warm, happy. You begin to feel sexually responsive. You feel stable. You feel secure. You feel trusting. You feel capable of facing problems. You feel supported and self-confident. And you feel capable of reaching out to others. Now this was one dimension. There are two other dimensions of an I-thou loving relationship. So this was the nurturing part, right?
Sustenance, caring.
And really, the nurturing part of this is no different than what we speak about when we meet each week. It means that I'm fully present. That I'm not there with fear. I'm open. Fully present and open. Without an image of you and without an image of me. This next quote is by David and Vera Mace. They were the first marriage counselors in America. And Paul and I studied with them too.
What year was that?
This was in the 70s, right? Only, they said, when two people know and trust and love each other, can they give each other complete freedom and support each other's growth to full autonomy. And this is interesting, because the next dimension of love that we discovered was something we call intentional loving. And what that means is that I do everything. I use myself in every way to help you to grow. And you do the same for me. Remember, this is a reciprocal movement. So I'll use myself in any way I need to help you to grow. And this is what it looks like.
So just to back up for a second and create the context again, these are the kinds of caring that we discovered went on in healthy, happy, intimate relationships.
In I-thou relationships. In vital, total relationships. So you see, it's so interesting because...
All two of them.
all two. But you see, that's my point. The point is that, first of all, they do exist. And the fact that they exist tells us that we're capable of that kind of a relationship as well.
Didn't that kind of happen by accident though, right? I mean, these people didn't know what they were doing, and they certainly didn't do it intentionally 40 years ago, 50 years ago.
What do you mean?
I mean, you know, people came together, and if they had a happy, healthy, loving, you know, integrated relationship, it was just because of who they were on some level, their background, they lucked out, they weren't traumatized,
It's interesting.
things like
Well,
that.
yes, it's...
So
But
here's,
they weren't doing it consciously.
hold on, here's what happened. So out of this group of healthy marriages, right, we found that they fell into two separate categories. Some we called naturals. They did it naturally. It came
That's it.
easy to them. It's almost like they intuitively knew how to have a happy relationship, and they had the maturity to do it. And they
Yes.
came from generally stable families.
Right.
But another group, almost the same number in the group, were learners. They didn't have good childhoods growing up. A lot came from broken homes. They didn't see good loving models for them, right? But they went and took courses in couple communication. They went to seminars. They took their marriage like, seriously. They knew they were ill-equipped.
But this is from the 60s on, right?
Yeah,
I mean, what happened before that?
The 70s.
The 70s. What happened before we had a language, before we developed a language to express what
Well,
was
there
going
were
on?
always some people that were able to naturally...
So it was just natural up until the 70s, up until we developed a way of, we connected a verbal language to what we should be doing. Before that, people were just doing what they were doing without any thought or deliberation or classes.
okay.
I mean, when you were in the shtetl in Europe or Poland, you weren't going to classes.
Okay, hold on.
No,
listen,
no.
So wait, but
But-
the Maces would say, this couple that we studied with and were the first marriage counselors, they came along and they said that in the 70s and the 60s, there was a big revolution going on. Traditional marriage was beginning to wane.
Yes.
Traditional marriage was based on role prescriptions. I went out and made the money, you stayed home and took care of the kids, and as long as I did my role and you did your role, we were supposed to be happy. That started to break down with all the cultural changes and movements, and they were articulating what they called a companionship marriage, where roles were blurred and the couple stayed together not out of obligation, because divorce was now becoming more prominent and there was less stigma against it. They stayed together by the bond of the quality of their intimacy. That's what would keep people together. And so their work was to help define what makes for happy intimacy, and that's what the work we built on by trying to research into happy relationships so we could offer couples a guidebook. You want to be happily married, you've got to be able to deliver this kind of caring. Now, some people will be able to do it remarkably well, some might only be doing it mediocrely well, but this is a guide that you could use, a toolbox. And so if you want to take your relationship consciously, not sleepwalk through it, you'll know, if you're interested, that these are the kinds of attitudes and behaviors that are acquired.
Men have the reputation of not really being in touch with their feelings. Men have the reputation of not being able to express themselves. And women have friends, they talk, they're more nurturing and so
Yeah,
on.
yeah.
And there's kind of a clash. It's like, I would say, well, what are you feeling? And my husband couldn't come up with it.
Yes, yes, yes.
That's the
But
condition,
But
sure.
but that's the conditioning. But I think that's changing now. And but men have feelings. They feel very, very, very deeply. They do have feelings.
Oh, absolutely, I
Yes,
agree with you,
that's
but
right.
they can't.
Well, I guess in the work world, if you don't get paid for it, you don't use it.
And I think you're conditioned to, it's not that you don't feel, it's, you're conditioned to be more stoic, I think is the best way to kind of, at least that's how I perceive it, and I kind of, yeah, but we do go through life differently, and we've been conditioned to go through life differently. I think you're seeing a change, though.
It's
And I
definitely,
think- and I
it's
think
changed.
it's, you know,
Definitely
Like
it's
Jeff was saying, if you don't have the language to
Yeah.
express what you feel, it's difficult.
yeah, you-
Yes, but now we do have
now
the
we do.
language. And also, there's an awareness now of being able to at least self-reflect.
Mm-hmm.
What is it that I'm feeling? And what are my fears in any given situation, especially in an intimate relationship? What are my fears? This terrible fear of rejection, this terrible fear of not good enough.
You know, it's funny, I've often thought, I was married in 1960, and I worked and my husband worked. We lived in 94th and Broadway at the time. And we both got home from work at the same time. He went upstairs, read the paper. I went to the supermarket, bought dinner, went upstairs, cooked it, served it, whatever. It never occurred to me, because of my upbringing, that he should participate.
Right.
The man's job was to relax, and the woman did the work.
That's the role.
That was my
the
role.
role. That was the role. But now it's different.
Works
It's
for me.
but you
Then you
see,
get really good at it.
but it's different and it's changing because our whole consciousness is changing, and we've got to change because we can't only see it as male and female. I think the time has come to just see it as human and no longer male and female.
And that's why this political thing's been so illuminating, right?
Yes.
Especially on the roles that each of them play, right?
Yes.
He's this guy who can do whatever he wants because he's a guy, and that's what
Right.
they're allowed to do.
Right.
She's forced to sort of act more
Yeah.
firm because a woman has to be if she's going to be able to do that job. And a lot of the problems we see is that men control all these decisions, and they're not doing a really good job of it on a lot of levels, on a global level.
That's right.
And that, to me, is what that this has been so
Yes.
fascinating.
Yes.
And you hope that it's changed, but it doesn't feel like it sometimes.
Well, but you
It feels
see,
like
it's happening, and there's an awareness of it happening. So nothing stays the same anyway. Everything is changing. And hopefully this will bring us to a better place. That's what we have to hope for. Very briefly. So there was this intentional caring. So you use anything you can, whether finances or time or covering for the other person, so that the other person can grow. And it's essential that we keep growing. Right? I mean, we've got to. A tree doesn't stop, it just keeps growing, growing, growing. We're no different. We have to keep growing. And it has nothing to do with age. We have to keep growing, and growing, hopefully, in awareness. So, but growing to just fulfill your potential of whatever it is. And so you use yourself to help the other person to grow. And then the last that was called intentional caring. I intentionally use myself to help you to grow. And then the last category we discovered was reverential caring. There's a deep reverence for the other person. So that means that I feel in relationship with you that I am fully known, warts and all, nothing is hidden. I am fully known, and I am deeply loved, and I am profoundly valued. And you feel the same, that you are fully known, deeply loved, and profoundly valued. And that's a reverence for the other person. A reverence for the other person. When there is that kind of a feeling, the relationship becomes sacred. And it is then a sacred place.
So it's a reverence, it's a shared intimacy.
The whole, yes.
Based on something, and then what's the second one?
So the whole thing is a shared intimacy, but it's manifested in this kind of loving, caring, nurturing, intentional loving, intentional loving to help you to grow. I intentionally want to help you to grow. Because a lot of relationships fail because one person wants to grow and the other person either doesn't or doesn't want you to grow. But here it's reciprocal. And the third is this reverence. And when there is this reverence, it's sacred.
And I would imagine all those aspects would need to be roughly sort of balanced and proportional.
Yes.
If you're overly reverent,
No, you're right.
or overly nurturing,
Yeah.
or, you know,
No.
killing
Yes,
yourself.
you're right. You're
so
right.
it has to be.
That's right. See, we broke it
Sort
up.
of a
We
nice-
broke it up to study it.
Yeah,
But really it's one thing.
right.
And it's reciprocal. And by the way, it's effortless. It doesn't feel like, oh my God, this is so much work. It's effortless. You see. And that's what it looks like in an I-thou relationship. And that's a relationship we're all yearning for and longing for. And so when one is treated badly in a relationship, it's painful because that's not what this is about. It's about awareness that we are all of one essence. And you can call it the absolute reality, you can call it God, you can call it the ultimate, it doesn't matter what you call it. But we're all of that one essence, that one non-conceptual awareness. We're all that. It's not my awareness and your awareness, there's awareness.
So the situation I talked about before, go back 56 years today. Okay, we're both working. It wouldn't occur to my husband that he wouldn't go shopping with me. It wouldn't occur to him that he wouldn't be helping me make dinner. I mean, not that it
would occur.
It would.
Yeah.
It would. It would occur. I mean, it would be like, of course. I mean, the idea is that it never occurred to me.
Yes.
Because of my programming.
Yes.
And it is now, what is it called, critical mass or whatever,
Yeah.
where it's integrated somehow.
That's right. That's right.
You know, men can't nurse the babies, but they get up, they change diapers.
Yes.
You know what I mean? They do work that
Yes.
only the women used to do. So it's all It's all different.
That's right.
Yeah, and then they have a much better relationship with their children because of it.
That's right.
Absolutely.
That's right.
Absolutely.
That's right. But that's if you want a truly healthy intimacy. Most of the young couples that we see, or the young single people we see, are it seems that they just want to connect quickly and then disconnect. It's more about sexual gratification.
Quick fix.
Yes, rather than really getting to know the other person, being open to the other person, developing an intimacy with the other person, because that means I have to go past myself. I can't stay in my selfish me. So rather than go past myself, I'll just have a superficial relationship with you, and then we kind of use each other, but it doesn't really grow, and so the people don't really grow. In not all cases, some cases.
You know, it's funny, you keep using the word grow. We eloped August 12th, 1960. I went to work that morning, and the man I worked for was one of the best art directors in the country, Bob Gage. And he knew. And the last 2 words he said to me was, grow together.
Yes,
Oh.
Isn't that funny?
that's right.
Grow together. And I
Exactly.
didn't quite get it,
That's right.
you know?
Yes.
And he had it.
Yes.
He was brilliant.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
If you talk to any couples who are in a good, solid relationship, they'll both tell you the relationship helped them grow. And when you help me grow to fulfill more of my God-given talents and capabilities, that's a tremendous, that endears you to me in a special way, because everyone likes to feel that they're, you know, manifesting themselves in the world in the fullest possible way. That's a health tonic. That's a prescription for health. You know, to feel frustrated and not able to manifest your being in the world is a prescription for neurosis and for probably physical illness as well. So when you are helping me run on all 8 cylinders and hit my stride and meet goals that are important, that's a special bond. And of course it's mutual. So that's what he meant. Grow together. And intentional caring is that component of the relationship.
That's
that component of the caring that
Right.
we're talking about.
That's
and
right.
we found it when we interviewed these couples.
Yes.
And by the way, just to tell you, it was Evelyn's dissertation, but we interviewed the couples together. And the question,
Separately.
yeah, separately. I interviewed the husbands, she did the wives, sometimes we
That's
changed
got to
up.
be fascinating.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
what we
that's-
wanted to know was, how does he care for you? How does she care for you? And we got every possible way they could think of how they felt cared about. And then we analyzed it and broke it down into these, it fell into these 3
Wow.
general categories.
Wow.
Yeah, it
So it
opened
came
itself
from-
up to
yeah.
us.
It came from the people's lives themselves.
Wow.
But it also had to do with values.
Yeah.
You know, like what's important to you. So, if honesty, true honesty is important to you, you're going to have a trusting relationship.
Personal integrity.
Personal integrity. You will act with personal integrity. If harmony is important to you, then you're going to want to have order between you and inside you. Psychological order. So the value of harmony is really important. And if goodness is important, if that's a true value of goodness, then you are going to want to be a compassionate, empathetic person. Because that reflects your inner goodness, and it pulls the goodness out of the other one as well. So what's important to you is essential, to look at what's important to you. You know, when it's interesting because when we talk about freeing ourselves of this me, this ego, so that we can know our true nature, it's also essential that we see what is important to us. Do we even know what's important to us?
Mm-hmm.
In day-to-day living, what really counts? What do we value? What is important? Have we ever paid any attention to that? So if harmony is important, I'm not going to fight with you. I want harmony. If anger arises, I'm going to deal with it, right? First within my own self, and then I'll come to you if I have to with it. But it's for the intention of harmony, right? If goodness is really important to me, how compassionate am I? How empathetic am I? And what about order? What about my own psychological order? What is going on in this psyche? Right? Is it full of fears? Is it full of angers? Is it full of regrets? Am I beating myself up? What's going on in here?
Are most people aware of what they want? Can they express it?
I think most people confuse what they need with what they want. And have a hard time seeing the difference.
Tricky.
Yes. But what do we need? What do we really, really need? Well, we need to feel safe, obviously. We need food, we need shelter, we need clothing. I mean, these are basic human needs. And every human being on this planet should have that need met. Because you see, to the degree that there are people on this planet that still are living in fear, that are not getting their basic needs met, then we can't really be at peace. We're one consciousness. How are we ever going to find true happiness on another man's misery, on another woman's misery? But there's not much we can do. I mean, some people can do. Some people can go to other countries and help, and they do. Some people can give money, and they do. Some people give time, and they do. So wherever we can, we do to help ease another's burden. And then we have to also look inside our own selves. How are we contributing to that consciousness, that global consciousness of suffering? By our own greed, our own fears, our own angers. So, I think it was a wonderful article that he wrote here, because he put this whole political thing really in a spiritual perspective, which is what has been missing, right? In fact, it's been opposite. has been the total opposite of it. And that's why it's been so painful and distressing to most people.
What David Brooks said in terms of Buba saying about getting to love, forgive, and so on. And I thought of myself and my own feelings about watching some people at rallies that are just expressing anger and fear and fury. There was something I was watching when I was watching, and Donald Trump was talking about the media, and he was revving up the crowd, and he was saying, look at them, they're crooked, blah, 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 look at them. And the crowd turned around and they started making fists to the media.
Yes.
And one man in particular looked like he was going to explode. He was raging,
Rage.
screaming, USA, USA.
Yes. Yeah.
And I'm saying to myself, who's that? How could I relate to this person? And it's the opposite of what they're saying.
That's right.
It's like, I don't know how I could ever bond with this person as being another human being with me, breathing the same oxygen and whatever on this planet. I don't know if I could do that.
I know. And yet there's such a sadness for a person to be so full of rage.
Yes.
I feel so sad. You feel such a sadness. That's a suffering human being. You cannot be so full of rage and not be terribly hurting inside and suffering. How could you? You've got to.
Yeah.
And then to pump that up is...
You know, the scary thing is, in religion they say that the pen is mightier than the sword, right? And today I believe what's happening is the camera is mightier than the gun. And some people don't like cameras.
They don't like cameras.
But just to finish things off, you were saying that the basic needs, right? Food, clothing, shelter. Well, once they're met, the next pre-emergent need that comes in is for affiliation, connection, belonging, and that brings us into relationships.
Right.
And so then once you're in the relationship realm, these are the parameters that are going to shape the quality of those relationships.
So when you were saying I was feeling kind of less of myself, feeling that I could not embrace, I'm prejudiced. I'm like, I just felt that I felt less of myself because I feel I can't do it. I'm not capable, or I think I'm not capable.
No, that's just, of course you're capable. Of course you're, but it just takes a different perspective.
It's like I don't see this country at the moment as the United States of America.
Well, we don't.
I see.
We're not very united.
I see a split. I mean, it's like I don't.
This is true.
I don't know what's going on. I I was brought up in the Second World War, the war stories, America, the flag,
Yes,
whatever.
Yeah.
The whole. And I'm a very nationalistic person.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
I love
Well,
this country.
Krishnamurti used to say, you are the world and the world is you. So all you can do is to clean up your own house, so to speak. That's all we can do. And to make sure that when you see the guy on TV who's full of rage, if you have a rage reaction back, if you have an angry reaction, see it in yourself.
That's right.
Let it go, see if you can get to a different place with it. All we can do is be aware of what we're putting out, what's in us and what we're putting out into the environment, the conscious environment that we all share.
Yeah, that's good.
Yes.
Regine, you were gonna say something?
Well, no, I was just thinking when you said united, I was like, well, what does that mean? Like, does it
Ah.
mean we should all think the same and have the same political views?
No.
Or, you know, it's not that. So I'm just thinking we need a broader
Well, yes.
vision of what united
Well,
means.
how about united as human beings?
Yeah, we recognize
Well,
each other as human beings who all
yes.
want to be happy, and we are all human beings. We are all connected. We are all the same.
Yes.
We might have all different views or vastly different views,
That's
and still
right.
respect each other as
Well,
human
that's
beings.
just it. That's what we read a few weeks
Yeah.
ago. To honor and respect each other's cultures, each other's traditions,
Mhm.
of course, each other's ideas. We don't have to agree. We
Political
don't have to
views.
disagree.
Yeah, political views. I mean, we're doing it on both
Yes.
sides.
Yes.
But we have to unlearn thousands of years of
Mm.
behaviors, right?
Condition.
We've created, it's funny because they show all these maps, right? Red state, blue state,
Yeah,
blah, blah,
yeah.
blah. And you look at a picture of the United States from space. There's no lines anywhere.
That's
There's no, those are all artificially man-created
That's-
divisions for some purpose, which
And we
still
believe in
be-
them.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it creates this whole,
That's right.
so releasing that on a global scale is an immense task, but I think but it has to start on an individual
That's
basis.
right.
You know,
That's
if we all truly kind of move into that thought
Yes.
pattern of
yes.
you are me and I am you, we are all part of the same thing, we're less likely to say, well, you know,
Yeah.
difficult to do, you know,
Yeah,
extremely
you
difficult to
shouldn't
do,
exist.
clearly.
It's like, yeah, I
But,
might not like
yeah.
your views, but
Right.
you have a
Yeah.
right to them.
How you get there.
You know,
Yeah.
it's
We're
interesting,
being pushed
yeah.
to the limit.
when you just think the phrase human being,
Human being.
human being. And then there's the other side to it where they say, you know, we're spiritual beings having a human experience.
Right.
And then when you think about that and you think of so many people in the world that are just starving and living in such, who don't have basic needs met. So how can we allow fellow spiritual beings or fellow human beings to be living that way? You know, how is that even going on? You know, if some Martians came down, they would say, how are you allowing this to happen? Why is it this way? And it's just, you know, it's just unfortunately that our consciousness hasn't evolved to the point where we see each other in that perspective. Where it's, you know, it's too much I-it.
Right.
It's too much I-it.
Yes.
Too many of us, in a way, instead of doing good deeds when no one is looking, we do good deeds because someone is looking.
Mm.
One good deed. I belong to the temple on JCOH. You do so, right?
Yeah,
Jeff?
very much.
So the cantor,
Yes.
unbeknownst to anybody, makes sandwiches on Wednesday afternoon, and she goes at 7 o'clock in the morning to the railroad station in East Hampton
Oh,
and gives
gives it
all
to
the
the
workers
workers.
sandwiches.
Wonderful.
wow,
Yes.
that's amazing.
Wonderful.
Not that they can't afford a meal,
Yes.
but just to let them know
Yes.
that somebody cares
That's right.
Wow.
and has thought about them
That's right.
and kind of changes their energy for the day.
That's true.
Very nice.
And
That's
it's
right.
nobody knows. I'm sharing it, but
Right.
Yes.
nobody knows about it.
That's right.
You know, and I just think that's so fantastic.
It is. It is. It absolutely is.
Inspiring.